welcome back to the Dental Hygiene Basics podcast. My name is Dana. I am your host, always excited to be here and to help you on your journey to becoming a registered dental hygienist. If you've been listening for a while and you really enjoy the content, I would love it if you would leave me a review. Honestly, podcasting, when you put your stuff out there, you kind of wonder if anyone's listening. Like, so rarely do people tell me, oh, I'm listening to your podcast and I really enjoyed this, or I really like this episode. I sometimes feel like I'm talking to nobody. So if you enjoy the episodes, leaving me a review, honestly, I read them because it makes me have a better day and it makes me feel good. So if you've got something nice you'd like to say, I would love it if you would leave me a review, and I promise it will not go unnoticed. But beyond that, I'm really excited to dive into today's episode. I almost said dive into today's lesson. I'm like, yeah, I'm a teacher and I'm here to teach some lessons. But truthfully, I was a little bit nervous to record this podcast. And I've thought about it on and off for probably almost 2 years that I should make something like this. But I don't know why. I kept being a little nervous to do it. I think I was a little nervous that I may offend or upset or make someone feel bad like they did something wrong. And I really am not here to do that. I want us all to learn and grow together. And anyways, that's kind of what's held me back from doing it. But this has come up so much lately in my life. I've seen other people posting similar things, and it really just got me thinking, hey, this is something we could all be better at, myself included. So I am going to talk to you today about email etiquette and just etiquette whenever you are reaching out, conversing with someone, especially through technology. Like I said, email, it may be social media, anything like that. What made me inspired to create this episode is because of some interactions that I've had with people. And I thought it was very interesting. Maybe the lack of respect or lack of saying thank you. Sometimes people just send me like a point blank question and then I answer, and I put a lot of thought into my answers and then just never getting a thank you back. And so you're kind of like, man, I feel a little bit taken advantage of, but also at the same time, it bothers me because I'm like, did they get it? Did it go to spam? Did they ever receive it? It kind of makes you feel like something was left unopened, right? Like you still have something lingering on your to-do list because you never got a reply. And then eventually, you kind of forget about it. And I don't know. I just always wonder, I'm like, did the student even get that response? So I want you to just keep in mind there are some professional ways that we can correspond with others. And I think this is really important if you are applying to dental hygiene school, if you're in dental hygiene school, if you're conversing with people that you respect, whether that's on social media or, they're a business owner, whatever that may be, because how you put yourself out there in an email really, that might be the first impression that someone gets of you ever, right? And I will just say, I've gotten some emails that are just, you're like, wow, okay, that's how we're getting to know each other, right? Like no formalities, no hello, how are you? Nothing like that. Just point blank, like, here's my question, answer it for me. It feels a little bit demanding sometimes. And like I said, I've had a few instances where things like that have happened. I think this also triggers me personally. And again, I can only come from my own perspective, but I think it triggers me personally because of my mom growing up. She is huge on the thank you note. Okay. So, every time we got a present, whether it was for Christmas, our birthdays, or if we went somewhere and someone did something nice for us, what were we doing? We were going home and we were writing thank you notes. I, to this day, still write thank you notes often. Like I probably write 5 to 10 thank you notes a month. And that's no joke. That's just me. That's how I was raised. The thing about the thank you note and just saying thank you in general, it's more for the person. And the thing is, when you say thank you to somebody, they're like, oh, you're welcome. It You may not even really think that much about it when someone says thank you. If like a student says thank you to me, I'm like, yeah, of course, no problem. But what do I notice more? I notice it more if someone does not say thank you. You know what I mean? Like if you just held the door open for somebody and they just walked in and didn't even say thank you, you'd be like, well, that was rude, right? But if you hold the door open for someone and they walk in and they say thank you, it's an expected response. And I think that's something that we are missing a little bit in this professional technology kind of weird overlap day and age is what would we do in real life if we were actually speaking to somebody? How would we actually treat them? You would shake your hand, you would introduce yourself, you would say hello. And maybe, I mean, that might also feel a little bit outdated to you too. And this is why I think another reason I was a little bit hesitant to record this, because we have some huge gaps between our generations and how we approach things. A lot of the older generations, right? They may still write mail, right? It's not unusual for me to send an email thank you versus a handwritten one. Whereas with the younger generations, they may just send it off in a text message style, just thank you, right? Quick and simple to the point. It just depends, right? Everyone's going to be different. I hate to put people into a box, but I do want to have this conversation because, again, you're embarking on your career and this is a professional career. And the way that you put yourself out there really does say something about you. And I again, I don't know why I'm so nervous to talk about this, but I see some of the emails and the messages that are being sent to me and the tone and the way that they're coming across. I really wonder if these are the same ways that people are wording messages to admissions committees, to dental hygiene professors, to people that they're asking for personal statement or not personal statements, to people that they're asking for letters of recommendation. And what I'm really seeing is just a general disregard for etiquette and respect in the tone of the email and also in the way that you address the person in the email. So I can imagine if I was on an admissions committee and someone just sent me a random question and didn't say, hi, Professor Palladino, how are you today? My name is so and so. I have a question about the upcoming interview. Thank you so much for your time. Ask the question. All right, looking forward to our interview together. If someone sent you that, you're like, okay, wow, this is really professional. They have questions. They're asking them thoughtfully. They're being respectful of my time, but also they respect me, right? If you have poor email communication or poor messaging communication in general, what that really says is you don't respect the person that you're messaging. If you don't take the time to craft a thoughtful email, which is so easy nowadays, because all you have to do is ask ChatGPT, write me a professional, email or a professional template, and then just sub that in every time, right? So if you're not doing something like that, it kind of comes across as that you don't respect the person that you're messaging, right? If you don't take the time to really think about how you're wording it and, putting that effort in, if you just send it like a text message, just almost like we're friends and I should know this like about you or whatever, it just comes off as a little bit disrespectful. And it doesn't really make me want to put a thoughtful answer into your question because I think you're probably just going to write it off and you're probably never going to say thank you. And that's the worst thing, right? If I do send a very thoughtful email response, something back, looking forward to seeing you, and then I don't get a response at all, you don't even say thank you, then I'm kind of like, wow, what was the point of all that? I spent time out of my day and oftentimes to craft like a nice email back to somebody, especially if they put thought into it, if they're answering your questions, if they, it's a decent length, email, that took time, probably at least 10 to 15 minutes of someone's time to respond back to you. So I think the least that you can do is respond back with a thoughtful thank you. But beyond all that, I think I was blessed again to be taught the art of letter writing and how to send a thank you and the things that you should include in a thank you note. But I don't think that we were all taught that. And also, sometimes there's different scenarios where you need a different style, way that you're handling these, right? And so I went to RDH Under One Roof, which is a huge conference. And at the start of the conference, I did this like pre-conference. It was kind of like a leadership career growth. What would you call it? Like a mastermind, basically. And that was called RDH Evolution, which I absolutely loved, highly recommend. And one thing that we talked about was how you're presenting yourself via email. And one of the first things that they recommended was have a good email, like a good professional email address. So, mine would be like my name, right? Dana at whatever, or Dana.Palladino at whatever. And then also if you, have a crazy email address, just create a professional one. Okay. But something where when people type in your name to email you back, it pops up and they know exactly who they're looking for. So there are settings in your email address. I actually had to go do this recently. I had to change it because all of my emails coming from my personal would say dental hygiene basics. So when people went to type in Dana looking for me, nothing would pop up because what I had it set on to pop up was dental hygiene basics. That was like my name in their system. So make sure your name set up in your system is your system. If you don't know how to do that, that's the other thing, guys. If you don't know how to do something, please do me and your professors and everyone a favor. Do a quick Google search and see if you can figure it out on your own. I think nowadays, sometimes we just ask these questions that are very simple. I had someone ask me, do you know any free resources for mock interviews? And I did not know. But what did I do? I took a quick second and I just Googled free interview sources, and I entered like free mock interviews, AI. Next thing you know, I had a ton of different search results. So just do a quick Google search and see if you can find something like that. I'm not saying that it's wrong to ask that question. I'm just saying sometimes you can find the answer quicker and maybe get something that you're really looking for a little bit faster than having to wait for that person to respond to you. So that's a little side note there. But again, you can go in and change how your name shows up when you email someone. You can literally change it to your name. So, change it to your name. And then maybe one day you'll decide, oh, I want it to say Dana.RDH or whatever. It's something professional that you can carry with you beyond once you graduate and use that as well when you are connecting with people, because networking is huge. If you have a good professional name and it's easy to find you when people are trying to message you back, boom, that's like professional etiquette, rock and roll. It just makes your life and their life easier as well. Now, the next thing is the subject line. What should you put on the subject line? You should put what you are planning to talk to them about. Don't make it long and drawn out, just super, super straightforward. So don't put, hey, that just is so unprofessional. I'm sorry. Okay. And again, these are all things I learned at RDH Evolution, but they are true. They're true professional etiquette when you are messaging someone. It shouldn't just say, hey, or question, right? Because if that person wants to come back to that and look at it later, it helps trigger their memory to know what you talked about, especially if you have a long email thread going. Okay. So a better example would be saying like question about tomorrow's clinic requirements, or question about interview date, or question about, admissions process, right? So that they know what's coming down the pipe and they can respond to it when they're ready, and they'll know where they need to be mentally to respond to it. All right, from there, once you start typing your message, you should use the name and appropriate title when possible. You may not always know the appropriate title, and that's okay. But if you're emailing a professor, say hello, professor, and their last name, right? Or hi, doctor, whoever, if you're emailing a doctor. Maybe you don't know. It's okay to put Mr. or Miss, right? You don't always want to put Mrs., MRS, because that's usually for married women, but you could put MS, just Miss. That kind of is a broad spectrum covering, just in case you're not sure. Of course, avoid very casual openings unless you know the person. Okay. But even still, if they are in a position higher than you or somewhere that you are aspiring to be, go more professional than you think. Okay. From there, get to the point. And I think this is something that younger generations are a little better with. They do tend to just point blank ask the question. Which is great, but they may leave out formalities. So if you find that that's you, that you just type the question and hit send, whoa, you need to put a few little formalities in there, especially if it's your first time emailing the person ever. Okay, you should explain a little bit about yourself, the situation, say hello, how are you doing? Thank you for taking the time to read my email. Give it a little bit of oomph to it. Make that person feel good about wanting to help you, because that's what they're doing, right? They're going to be helping you, maybe even for free throughout this email process, right? Sharing their wisdom with you, answering your questions. So show them that same respect. Once you get those quick little formalities out of the way, it doesn't have to be super long, then get to the point, right? Get to the purpose of the email. Keep it super, super concise. Don't really get into really long, rambling explanations. Again, if you're not sure, pop it into Chat GPT, pop it into Claude, pop it into a free AI and have them rewrite it for you. Just say, I want this concise, but friendly and professional, something along those lines. Okay. You can go straight hardcore professional. I learned this at RDH Evolution. I thought it was really interesting. We learned different personality types, and I'm just blanking on what it is called, the DISC profile. Okay, so for me, for example, in the DISC profile, I am a high D. What that means is I like people to get to the point, okay? But I also I'm an extrovert too. So I do like a little bit of like friendliness and a little bit of how are you? Like I like a little bit of that intro, and I like to feel like I don't want to say buttered up a little bit, but I want to feel like we're making a genuine connection through that, right? So I want it to be to the point, but I do like some of that friendly formality as well. There are some people who fall into more of a C profile, which is more like a calculated, they want cold hard facts. They want to the point. They don't need a lot of, how are you doing? Or how was your summer? I hope you're doing well. They don't need as much of that. The thing is, when you are reaching out to someone, especially if you've never met them, you don't know what kind of person they are. So you want to create a good generic email template for how you're going to quickly and concisely hit on all of those profile types, right? So you could ask ChatGPT, hey, create me a quick email template when I'm reaching out to someone about this that will satisfy all disc profiles, right? You could just do something very simple like that. And it's going to, again, just kind of hit on all the things. From there, when you get the response back, then you can tailor however you like want to respond back to them. So if you write out this beautiful profile, you ask, how are you? Hope you're having a great summer. And they write back and they don't mention anything about how they are or their summer. They want to get to the point. They want to just rock it out, right? They don't need all of those little formalities. Okay. So then when you reply back to them, you can be point blank. Thank you for your reply. I appreciate your time, and leave it at that, right? Or thank you. I have one follow up question. This is it. Have a great day, right? You can make it more simplified based on how the person responds to you. If the person responds to you and they're like, wow, I had a great summer. I just traveled to Rome and I spent all this time doing this. Thank you so much for asking. Here's the answer to your question. When you respond back, you should mention, wow, Rome, that sounds incredible. I've always wanted to go there. I hope you had the best time. Thank you so much for answering my question, and arrivederci Roma or something. You could just say something like that because they've given you that information to reply back to them in that way, right? So this is like mirroring. You kind of are mirroring the way the person is responding back to you. And then you're creating your own little kind of, like your own little fluid conversation, right? And it makes it more fun, and you'll see that this is really helpful even in patient care. If a person is really closed off and shut and you just keep trying to bombard them with talk and talk and talk, that may not be what that person wants to do right then and there. So you get a feel for it based off of how the person responds to you, but you should always start the initial interaction more formal and a little friendly as possible. Okay. You don't want to come into it too straightforward because you may be kind of inadvertently ticking off people who have a different approach. Okay. And that's just how we are as people. But as in a dental hygienist role, you have to be kind of like a chameleon and get used to interacting with different people all day. And I know that can be exhausting. I'm not telling you to change who you are as a person. It's just a little bit of how you make people comfortable and also how they respond to you. I know when I'm saying this, and I think this is another reason why I'm kind of like hesitant to talk about these things. I don't want people to feel like I have to manipulate the conversation or change who I am or do this. That's true. But if you think about the people who are really out there crushing it, networking, what are they doing? They're doing these things. Okay. Make sure you provide context for what you're asking about. Make sure that you ask clearly what you need. Don't make them guess. Okay. It's okay to be a little bit more detailed because then that eliminates some of that follow up, right? And then also respect a person's boundaries. Okay. Don't expect an immediate response. You may need to wait at least 24 hours, okay, before you follow up. And I would even personally say like 48 to 72, unless it's like a strict deadline type situation. But at the same time, if you need an answer like right away, I've had some people email me and they're like, hey, I would love to interview you for this. I need it by tomorrow. I'm sorry, that's probably just not can happen. Like it's very unusual that I would have that amount of free time into my schedule to meet with you for an interview that's due tomorrow. You probably knew the interview was, what day it was due for weeks before, right? At least. So just keep that in mind. Just because it's your emergency does not make it my obligation, and that's just going to make life a little bit more challenging if you're operating like that. Okay. Finally, whenever you close out, make sure you close professionally. Warm regards. Thank you for your time. Include your name, any relevant info, your follow-up email, your phone number, if you think that might be necessary. You don't have to include anything beyond that, but at least include your name. It's also kind of helpful if you include your credentials. So if you just put student RDH and maybe you put the school that you go to, right? That would be fine. Or if you put, once you graduate, you put, your name, comma, RDH, master student at wherever, it's okay to give a little bit of information like that. And then the last thing is to proofread before you send. I don't expect people to type perfectly all the time because emails are fast, or a lot of times you're typing on your phone, right? That can get a little challenging. But also think about the context within which you're sending this. If you're sending this to someone on an admissions committee, if you're sending this to an interviewer, take the time to think about what you're sending and how you're sending it. Just run it through AI or Grammarly or something really quick to make sure that it sounds good and that it's professional and that you don't have a ton of spelling errors. We don't want it to sound too rushed. We don't want it to sound abrupt, right? You don't want the tone to sound like forceful or harsh. And just make sure that you also spell the person's name correctly. I know I've made this mistake before where I type in someone's name and their name is literally in their email address, right? Like their name is like Mr. Whatever. And I type in Mr. Whatever, but I just misspell the last name. It's right there in the email, right? So it's okay to double check those things. I think just what happens a lot is when we're sending off these messages, we think about it in the moment and we think, I got to ask this right now. And that's what you do. And you are like, I got to send it off before I forget, right? And you just send it, boom, 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 send it really fast. I totally get it. That's my life too. I'm like, oh, I need to reach out and respond to this person about this and that. There's so much going on. But I really want you to think about the situations in which you're doing that and what they're saying to the other person about you. Because we want to show up with our best foot forward, especially as we're entering into a professional career. And you'll hear this so many times. I'm not the first to say it, I won't be the last, but the world of dentistry is very, very small. All it takes is for me to ask one person, hey, do you know this person? They're from here, whatever. They're like, no, I don't, but I bet my friend does. Or, yeah, I went to school with that person, whatever. To have this conversation, it does not take much to start making those webs of connections between different people, even if they're in different cities. Okay. So you want to put your best foot forward. Like, oh yeah, that name does sound familiar. They actually emailed me about this. They were super kind. They said thank you. you know, and that's the last thing I'll leave with. I'm going to bring it full circle, bringing it back to the thank you. Thank the person for their time. If they take the time to follow up and respond to you, especially if you're asking questions, be appreciative because it makes that person want to keep doing it. People who don't get told thank you, they naturally will gravitate to the people who do tell them thank you because they feel valued. It's just a part of life, right? Take this into your everyday interactions as well. If your professor comes in and they show you how to do something, they correct you, even if at the time you're like, oh my gosh, this feedback hurts, it hurts. Just pause and say, thank you so much for telling me that. I know it can probably be hard to have to tell students, these things, but I really do appreciate that. I appreciate you telling me, right? Because if they don't tell you, who else is? I think you'd be surprised what can happen when you tell your instructors thank you and you enter into those experiences with, open arms to receive whatever comes at you and being grateful for it. Not to say if you're being abused or something, you should say thank you for it, because that's not the case. Like, if someone's just being rude to you, that you don't have to be kind to them. Okay. There are different scenarios for everything, but just keep in mind, this is just some etiquette. And etiquette doesn't mean that it has to be what you do in every single scenario, but it gives you a guideline for how to put your best foot forward whenever you're having these conversations with people when you aren't seeing each other face to face. We do have to be careful of tone. We do have to be careful about the word choices that we use, and we need to reach out to people with professionalism, right? So we live in an age of digital, taking over, and I thought it was so precious. I had some students write letters to themselves, and I had to teach them how to address a letter to themselves. So that's so different because the older generations, that's how they primarily communicated, right? Was through letters. And that's not the case anymore. So things are changing. I do think some etiquette will change over time as well. I think we're already seeing that. Like I said, people feel comfortable enough to just message me like I'm their friend, like they're just texting me. They don't say, hey, hi, hello, how are you? They just send the message. And part of me, that makes me feel good because I think, well, you wouldn't just send that to someone if you didn't think they were kind enough to respond, right? But at the same time, just think about what that says about you on the other end, right? If you're not taking the time to really approach someone with some etiquette, it makes a difference. So that is all I have to say on professionalism today and etiquette. I hope that you learned something new and maybe we'll consider how you're corresponding with people. If you have any questions or if there's something that you've seen that you're like, I hate when people correspond with me like this, then let me know. I would love to hear because I think these are things that we can learn together and continue to grow and improve. But remember, when in doubt, if the person is in a position that you want to be in, or if they're older than you, it's a great idea to respect your elders and to come at those with a respectable tone. All right, everybody. I know that you are going to do incredible things, and you wouldn't have made it this far if you couldn't if you couldn't continue to succeed on this journey. So best of luck, future registered dental hygienist. I'm rooting you on.